Thanks mostly to Hollywood, no self-respecting possessed house story can be portrayed without direct comparison to the granddaddy of all haunted house tales, Amityville. Hold on, Paul, you can make a spooky voice to introduce that better.
Amityville.
That's more like it, mate. Yep, I know, it was a book as well. It birthed more than one movie, 16 at last count, including a good dozen I'd never heard of, or simply never made it to New Zealand. The Amityville Curse, Amityville New Generation, Amityville Asylum, and who hasn't gone on to Rotten Tomatoes, upvoted Amityville Dollhouse to be placed alongside Citizen Kane and The Godfather. Me, for starters. Amityville This and That rolls on relentlessly half a century later. In order that we can do some comparisons with the Down Under events I'm about to retell, let's remind ourselves of the broad spine-tingling story here. In 1974, the ne'er-do-well Ronald DeFeo Jr., strung out on LSD and with a history of psych issues, shot to death all 6 members of his family inside 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York. As the house was now the site of an infamous murder, its resale value in this rather upmarket area plummeted, and thus it went for a song and was sold with many of the DeFeo's possessions still intact. The happy, for not too long, new owners were newlyweds George and Kathy Lutz, plus 3 kids, who were all Kathys. The Lutzes were fully conversant with the murders. It was reflected in the price. George's surveying business wasn't exactly flourishing at the time. Took it upon themselves to get the house blessed on site. This is at least their story. Later the priest in question said he only talked to Kathy over the phone. Anyway, without getting too bogged down in the inconsistencies, taking at face value the rest of the story, either in writing or celluloid, the family endured a month of spooky, unsettling occurrences. Pigs with glowing eyes, demonic children, a stigmata, slime, add every trope under the bed, dark basement, tick. Secret red storage room that was so secret the kids used to plonk their toys in it, tick. Flies, everyone hates them. Was a wonder the Lutzes even made it 28 days. The thing about all those shenanigans on Long Island is most of it wasn't true, or at best, highly inflated. It was the construct of George, DeFeo's lawyer, and a publisher on the back of the movie success of The Exorcist, which had scared the bejesus out of everyone. Add an Indian cemetery, said to be underneath the house, that never existed. Malevolent Indian supernatural spirit, which had possessed DeFeo, sent him on his shooting spree, rather than any one of the substances he had consumed that night. Then his weak attempts to try and hide the crime. The alibi,
The mafia were involved.
The plot was now complete. When the door and windows were being smashed, ripped off their hinges by evil spirits, they were being tormented. They never bothered to call 911 once, nor were the neighbours kept up at night by the new family at 112, oinking noises at 2 in the morning, hooded demons putting the trash cans out. Amityville is the benchmark, and it was largely a hoax, a highly successful one at that. This story, on the other hand, fathered no box movies, spin-off movies, to hammer home a nail, as in Hammer Film Studios. The cutting-edge horror movies of the time when this happened included The Curse of the Werewolf, House of Usher, and Phantom of the Opera. Tame as Kiwi culture is about as down-to-earth as you can get. Introverted, certainly more then than today. Yet, even today, the average New Zealander needs a beer or wine in their belly and to even sing the national anthem. Going to the papers or book publishers means sticking your head above the parapet, best avoided. For the family here to discuss openly what was going on adds strength to the cause. It was going on, before I talk you through the unsettling goings-on here. I am conscious of what happened to the house in Amityville post the Lutzes. The house's infamy carries on to this very day. Just not the demons. They left after getting a better deal from another film studio. The house and street became a magnet for rubberneckers. The new owners were forced to redesign the frontage of their infamous Dutch colonial house to put gawkers off. Gone went the distinctive windows. The street number was changed. Then came along the internet. Anyone with Google can locate the house in as many seconds as it takes to type out
Location of Amityville Horror House.
I want to avoid a reoccurrence of this. Make number 6 a magnet for bored teenagers, and thus I've done my best to obscure the name of the family, street name. Besides, according to Google Street View, best I can tell, the original house has gone. It's been replaced with flats. I want to emphasise though, all testimonies here are real, with a bit of poetic licence on my behalf to make it more digestible for the listener. Let's get into it. It's the early 60s. Timaru, medium town, NZ, East Coast, South Island, New Zealand. What goes on there? It's a service hub for the rural hinterland, has a small port that's there primarily to service the output of a dairy processing factory and fishing fleets. One historic claim that happened 20 kilometres away. That was where Richard Pearce flew his monoplane 18 months before the riots. Population hovers around 30,000. It has always been much of a middle-class Kiwi haven. Not a town with the ultra-rich at one end and the desperately poor at the other. Lots of households in the middle. One of those was British immigrant and public servant P. Oliver. I did mention I've changed the name for privacy reasons, didn't I? His wife and 5 children. This was the post-war era of large families, and as a cryptic clue as to the year, it was the same time the oral contraceptive went on the shelves. The 7 Olivers snuck into their 50-year-old brick house with a seaside view of the picturesque Caroline Bay. Like other houses they had rented in the decades since they'd arrived from the UK, this was one step up in terms of space, a generous half-acre plus section for the children to kick around in. One of the other features were the high beam ceilings and wooden floors. Thus, it was a busy old time in the Oliver household, as well as a noisy one. The first time the family knew there was something afoot in their new house occurred a few months after shifting in. It was the middle of the day, and a midweek day at that. Mrs. Oliver was in the kitchen when she heard unmistakably what sounded like footsteps coming down the hallway. Distracted by what she was doing, she figured it must be either Mr. O shooting home from work or one of the kids had left school early. Only when she turned round to look at the kitchen door, where the footsteps had ceased sounding, there was no one. It had begun. Next, on and off a gibberish whispering. During the day, and if that wasn't already unsettling enough, come night time, there are also noises to accompany the voices. most obvious explanation was the children were playing tricks. Just whenever Mr. O arose to see where the sound was coming from, it simply disappeared. The children appeared asleep and blissfully unaware. This didn't last for long. They too reported strange noises, including those emanating from the roof. Up he went to see if they had an opossum or bird boarding above them. Roof, gables, guttering, etc. were checked. Nothing. Dodgy plumbing. Nothing. Plumbing couldn't explain why doors were opening and shutting on their own. Drawers would open and shut on their own. Leaving one shut would open on its own. Leaved one closed and it would open on its own. Pranksters were seen as a possibility. Did someone hold a grudge? Mr. Oliver worked with the health department as an inspector. Had he pissed someone off? But as time went by, the family became convinced, in their words, they were having visitations. It was supernatural in nature. Had they been the ones to import the entity from the UK? Had it always been there? The disturbances went on, more invisible footsteps. The sound of things falling in empty rooms. These noises were also coming in parallel. There could be noises in the roof, tapping somewhere else at the same time. Despite all of this, Mr. Oliver remained staunch, concluded a ghost was annoying, but ultimately harmless. Then there was the open fire that heated the home in winter. At times, it would blow cold air into the room. It was time to get a new house to rent. They had lasted 6 months longer than the Lutzes. Still continued to live in Timaru. No, nothing happened to the family post number 6, nor was there ever the Timaru dollhouse, in 3D naturally. Giant Timaru vs King Kong, going straight to videotape. It was anonymity in the suburbs. That's it, people. I hope you enjoyed this little number. It's a story I've wanted to cover for a while, being only the 3rd podcast format I've done. Should Kiwi things that go bump in the night be what you want more coverage of, liking is the best feedback you can give me. I have a number of supernatural happenings, like this one, that don't seem to have been covered elsewhere previously. Last but not least, you can listen to Weird NZ podcast in heaps of cool places. YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, that sort of thing. Listen to episodes while you're unicycling to work and practicing bagpipes.
There's no escape.
Spot you next time. Bye for now.